Richard Castillo had no idea that the 3-hour drive from Chicago to Detroit would become the longest walk of his life, because the moment he turned onto that familiar street, the past rose up to crush him with a force he could never have predicted. His sleek black BMW glided down the cracked road as he approached the house he had once deliberately erased from his memory. He expected to see a collapsed roof, peeling walls, a neglected yard, something that reflected the version of his ex-wife he had kept in his imagination for 10 years. Poor, fragile, dependent, still waiting for him, but what he saw instead made his heart stop. The once fading property now looked like something from an architectural magazine. The walls sparkled with fresh paint, the garden was sculpted with perfect precision, and 3 luxury cars far nicer than his own rested comfortably inside. A brand-new glass panel garage, but none of that compared to what truly sent a shock through his chest. A polished gold plaque beside the front door, Camilla Johnson Law Firm Civil Rights Specialist. Richard blinked, thinking his eyes deceived him. But the truth was undeniable. 10 years. It had been exactly 10 years since he walked away from this same street, walked away from a woman who was 8 months pregnant, walked away from a marriage he had promised would last forever, walked away because his mother had whispered poison into his ear. You cannot ruin your future for a girl like her. Think of your image. Think of the family business. You need a wife who elevates you, not drags you down. He had believed it. 20-6-year-old Camilla had woken up that cold November morning to find only a note on the kitchen table. I can't do this. I'm sorry. One sentence that shattered her life, her dreams, her future. One sentence that sent her into labor early out of stress, giving birth alone. Now here he was, 10 years later, returning as a powerful CEO, expecting to find a woman bruised by life. Instead, the door opened before he rang the bell, and there stood Camilla Johnson. Her presence alone was enough to silence the world. Her posture was unshakable, her brown skin radiant under the soft daylight, her tailored suit more expensive than anything he had ever bought her. Confidence coated her like armor, her smile was polite, but her eyes were ice. Richard. Her tone was steady, almost emotionless, punctual as always. Come in. He hesitated, not because he didn't want to step inside, but because suddenly he wasn't sure he belonged there, he wasn't sure he ever had. Still, he stepped in, and immediately everything he had rehearsed, the apologies, the justifications, the promises crumbled like ash. The house was a masterpiece. It smelled of success. It breathed accomplishment. Nothing about the space belonged to a woman who needed his help. Nothing belonged to a woman who had ever needed him at all. Camilla waited until he sat on the leather sofa before taking her place on the opposite armchair. An intentional distance, a judicial distance. Everything about her positioning felt like a courtroom setup. You must be wondering why I agreed to see you, she began, calmly crossing her legs. 10 years. No calls, no messages, no explanations. Richard swallowed. He had practiced this. He could handle this, or so he believed. I was going through a difficult time. He began. My family pressured me, my position at the company. Camilla held up a hand, silencing him with nothing but poise. You were 28 years old, Richard. Old enough to run a corporation, old enough to calculate profit margins and negotiate multi-million-dollar deals, but apparently not old enough to handle fatherhood. Her words were scalpels. Precise, sharp, surgical. Before he could respond, footsteps sounded from the stairs. A boy appeared, 10 years old, with Richard's face but Camilla's composure, the child he abandoned, the child he never met. Mom, the boy said, Attorney Thompson is on the phone. The papers are ready. Camilla nodded, calm and controlled. Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes. Daniel. Daniel? His son had a name, and he had grown up without a father. Richard felt a knot twist painfully inside his chest. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words dissolved before forming. Camilla watched him with the analytical expression of someone who expected nothing from him, not even regret. When the boy disappeared upstairs, Richard cleared his throat. Camilla! I came here to help, financially. I know things must have been hard. Hard? She stood, walking to a shelf lined with framed achievements. Do you think I've spent 10 years crying over you? Waiting for you? She lifted a photo and held it toward him. Camila receiving an award. Michigan. State Layer of the Year, Civil Rights Specialist. 3 Supreme Court victories all successful. Richard felt the world tilt. You became all this? I became everything you said I couldn't? Her voice held no resentment, just truth, which hurt far more. Richard opened his mouth to speak. But Camila was already moving, pulling out another frame, another memory he had never cared to know. Let's talk about your mother. The temperature in the room dropped. The day after you left, she called me, Camila said. She said, and I quote, "My daughter, you must understand. Richard needs someone suitable, someone who helps his reputation, not someone who devalues it." Richard's face drained of color. He had never known, he didn't want to know, but the truth now stood before him, undeniable, before he could gather himself. Camila dropped the next bomb. 2 days later, I received a job offer. She looked at him with a chilling smile. From your family's biggest competitor. Richard froze. You worked for them? I worked for justice. Her voice was steady, powerful, and every piece of information I learned about how corporations like yours operated became ammunition. I discovered a talent for dismantling systems that prey on the vulnerable. Richard felt the pressure building around him. Every word she spoke chipped away another layer of the arrogance he had built over the years. He finally managed to ask, "Then why did you agree to see me today?" Camila's smile returned slow, deliberate, predatory, because after 10 years, "It's time." "Time for what?" he whispered. Before she could answer, Daniel ran down the stairs again. "Mom," Mr. Thompson said, "all documents have been filed. The press has already been notified. He wants to confirm tomorrow's press conference at 2 p.m. Richard felt a cold shock flood his body. Documents, press, court, something was horribly wrong. Camila gently touched her son's shoulder. "Confirm it, sweetheart." Then she looked at Richard and called the firm to inform them. A pause. A devastating pause. That Mr. Richard Castillo has arrived exactly on time. Daniel left the room. Silence fell like a blade. Richard's voice shook. "Camila, what is going on?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stood and walked toward the window, watching the neighborhood with a sense of purpose he couldn't decipher. "You drove 3 hours to get here," she murmured. "You must be tired." "Coffee? For what?" His voice cracked. "Camila, for what?" She turned, finally, truly turned, and for the first time her smile reached her eyes. "Richard, you didn't think your visit today was your idea, did you?" His stomach dropped. Cold realization seeped into his bones, every moment leading him here. The conversation with the former colleague, the sudden urge to resolve old wounds, the exact timing. None of it was coincidence. He had been led, guided, lured. Camila leaned back against the desk. "Men like you always underestimate women like me. And that arrogance? It always becomes your downfall." He tried to breathe, but the air felt thick. He stood, walked to the wall, examined the pictures he had ignored earlier. Each one was a silent weapon. Camila with families who won lawsuits. Camila at law conferences. Camila with political leaders. Camila shaking hands with the state governor. Corporate anti-corruption task force public interest cases. Richard staggered. He didn't know which terrified him more, that she had this much power, or that he had never seen it coming. The doorbell rang. Daniel rushed to open it. Richard heard voices familiar. Important voices. Marcus Thompson, one of the most feared civil rights attorneys in the country, stepped inside. Behind him stood prosecutor Patricia Wells, known nationwide for exposing corrupt executives, and a young man carrying recording equipment. Richard felt the floor disappear beneath him. Thompson stepped forward. "Mr. Castillo," he said, shaking Richard's hand with a cold professional smile. "We finally meet." Prosecutor Wells crossed her arms. "Richard, I'm sure you remember me. I know maybe 6 months ago, she continued. You tried to bribe me. Richard's heart almost stopped, he remembered. A dinner, a suggestion disguised as a donation. A compliance adjustment disguised as a favor. That was casual talk. He whispered. She held up a recording device. It wasn't. Camilla re-entered the room holding a thick folder. No. A book, a mountain of evidence. Her voice was clear, controlled, terrifying. Richard. 2 years ago, when we learned you would expand operations to Michigan, we began documenting your business practices. Thompson opened his briefcase. Bribery. Environmental violations. Systematic racial discrimination. Tax evasion. Use of tax havens. Illegal terminations. Every word was a hammer. Camilla folded her arms. You thought you were coming here to fix things. You thought I needed you? Her gaze hardened. But today, Richard. She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. You are here because you walked straight into the consequences you created. He tried to leave. Thompson stopped him with a single word. Sit, Richard. Sut. At 2:25 p.m., the first blow landed. Prosecutor Wells made a call. Announce it. Richard's phone exploded with alerts. Federal charges filed. Merger canceled. Investors fleeing. At 2:26 p.m., Thompson filed a civil lawsuit. 43 employees. Systematic racial discrimination. At 2:27 p.m., the Detroit Tribune published the exclusive recordings. At 2:30 p.m., live on national television. Richard's company collapsed. His reputation imploded. His empire turned to dust, $200 million lost in minutes, and Camilla watched it unfold with a calm that chilled the room, because she knew this was justice. Richard broke down. Why? Why did you do this? Camilla finally approached him. This time, she was close enough for him to see the pain he had caused, the pain he had never cared to witness. Because for 10 years you believed people like me existed to be stepped on? A pause, a deep, devastating pause. You left me pregnant and alone. You left your son without answers. You left believing I was too weak to rise. Her voice softened, but only in volume, not in impact. And because there are millions of women like me abandoned, underestimated, spoken down to, someone had to make an example. She placed a gentle hand on his arm, a gesture that should have conveyed forgiveness, but instead it carried closure. Richard, you taught me what happens when powerful men face no consequences. She stepped back, and I taught you what happens when a black woman has had enough. 6 months later, Richard lived in a one-bedroom apartment, serving 2 years of house arrest. He watched Camilla on television, accepting a national award, Women Who Make a Difference. She looked radiant, unshakable, victorious, whole. Her son, Daniel, now in a prestigious academy, sat proudly in the audience. Richard's company was gone. His partners gone, his reputation gone, his friends gone, and as he watched Camilla speak, her words echoed through his empty living room. Revenge is not about destroying others. It is about building so much greatness that no one who tried to break you can ever deny who you became. Richard finally understood. He had built an empire on exploitation. She had built a legacy on justice, and one legacy always outlives the other. Asterisk. The air inside the mansion grew still after those words, as if every corner of the house inhaled and refused to exhale. And one legacy always outlives the other. But no one inside understood how violently that truth was about to unfold. The clock in the hallway ticked with a slow, merciless rhythm, each second stretching like a warning no one yet recognized. Then came the knock, 3 firm taps that traveled through the marble floors and straight into the bones of everyone inside. For a moment nobody moved. Even the storm outside seemed to pause. The butler swallowed hard, glancing upward as if seeking permission from someone who no longer deserved to give it. When no one spoke, he forced himself toward the door, each step heavy with the knowledge that nothing good ever arrived quietly in the dead of night. He opened it only halfway. A cold gust swept inside first. Then the figure, tall, still, unshaken, by the wind, the darkness, or the weight of the family name that filled the walls behind him. His eyes didn't wander. They searched with purpose, cutting through the dim hallway, until they found exactly who he had come for. He stepped inside without waiting for permission. No one dared to stop him. The butler's voice trembled. "Sir, you weren't expected." "I know," the man replied, not looking at him. "If I had waited for an invitation, I would be waiting a lifetime." The door shut behind him with a low echo that rippled through the house like distant thunder. People emerged from the shadows of the living room, family members who once clung to their power like armor. Now they stood still, unsure whether to greet him or to hide. Finally, someone spoke from the back. A voice too carefully calm to be genuine. "You came back sooner than we thought." The man turned his head slowly, eyes landing on the one person who had spent years ensuring he never returned. His tone didn't rise. He didn't need volume to command the room. "You left me no choice," a murmur passed through the room. The words struck harder than any shout could have. Faces stiffened. Secrets began to shift like restless ghosts inside locked drawers. The oldest daughter stepped forward first, her posture poised but her eyes unsettled. "You should have told us you were coming. Would you have let me in?" he asked. She didn't answer. She couldn't. He took one long breath, the kind people take before tearing down the last brick in a wall someone else spent years building. "I know what's been happening in this house. I know what was done behind closed doors. I know what was taken from me, from all of us." His gaze swept across each face, letting the weight of recognition sink in. "And I'm not here to be pushed out again." The matriarch's voice cracked before she could stop it. "You have no proof." He stepped closer, his voice like a blade wrapped in calm. "I don't need proof. I have truth. And truth doesn't need permission to exist." The younger son clenched his fist, trying to stand taller. "We built this legacy. You walked away from it." "No," the man said, locking eyes with him. "You buried it." "I'm here to dig it back up." Silence. Crushing, suffocating silence. The chandelier above them swayed slightly as the storm. Outside intensified, lightning flashing through the windows like a camera capturing the exact moment a dynasty began to crumble. The walls, once symbols of their pride, now felt like witnesses forced to relive every moment of cruelty, every lie, every manipulation smothered under wealth and silence. "You think you can come in here and undo years of work?" The matriarch said, her voice shaking more from fear than anger. "I don't need years," he replied. "I need tonight." Someone inhaled sharply. Someone else stepped back. Everyone suddenly understood that this wasn't a conversation, it was a reckoning. "All of you," he continued, "forgot one thing while you were building your perfect empire. Blood remembers, pain remembers. And truth," he paused, letting the tension stretch across the room like a drawn bow, "always finds a way back home." The storm roared outside. The lights flickered. And in that moment, everyone inside realized that the legacy they had tried to protect wasn't the one that would survive. It would be the one they tried hardest to erase. And for the first time, they felt it slipping from their hands. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls were closing in, tightening around the family that once believed they controlled everything within them. No one dared to speak, yet everyone felt the weight of his presence pressing against their chests. The storm rattled the windows again, but even nature seemed quieter compared to the tension inside. The eldest son finally stepped forward, puffing, his chest as if trying to restore the authority that had slipped silently through his fingers. "You can't just show up and rewrite history," he said, though the quiver in his voice betrayed him. The man turned his head slightly, his expression calm but unyielding. "History was never yours to write, you only edited it." A visible flinch spread across the room. Those words hit too close to the truth they had spent years pretending didn't exist. He walked deeper into the house, his footsteps echoing like a slow drumbeat, drawing all eyes to him. There was no rush in his pace, only certainty, the kind that couldn't be bought or silenced. "You remember this hallway?" he asked quietly, stopping beneath the portrait of their late patriarch. The painting stared down with cold eyes, a face carved into memory and fear. Everything that was done began right here. Every lie that spread in this house started under his watch. The matriarch stiffened. "Your father built this family." "He built a prison," the man replied. "You turned it into a throne." Gasps echoed through the space. Even those who once defended her felt the truth like a tremor beneath their feet. He reached out, brushing dust from a carved wooden pillar as if touching the past itself. You thought burying me would bury what he did, but things buried alive don't stay quiet forever. A shiver passed through the room. Tonight, he continued, I'm opening every door you sealed shut. No one moved, no one breathed, and for the first time they understood they were no longer protecting a legacy. They were running from it, but running was useless now, because the truth had already stepped into the house with him, filling every corner they once controlled. A heavy silence clung to the air like fog, refusing to lift. The younger daughter's voice finally cracked through it, thin and trembling. What? What are you going to do? He didn't turn toward her immediately. Instead, he let the question hang, letting its fear settle into every heart in the room. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, too steady. What I should have done a long time ago. He lifted his gaze to the staircase, to the rooms above rooms that hid memories no one dared revisit. I'm not here to ruin this family, he said quietly. I'm here to free it, the matriarch's breath hitched. From what? He met her eyes at last. From the lies you built it on? The words struck harder than anything else he had said tonight, and the room reacted as if the floor shifted beneath it. The matriarch's face drained of color, and for the first time, the strength she carried like armor began to crack. The others watched her closely, as if waiting to see whether she would deny it. Or finally fall silent, but she said nothing. He stepped further into the room, the storm's distant rumble following him like a shadow. You think power comes from silence, he said softly. From shutting doors, from burying truth, from convincing yourselves that the past can be edited out of existence. But silence is just another cage. No one dared interrupt him. The eldest son finally exhaled and shook his head, though his voice was much smaller than before. You talk like you've come to tear the family apart? I came, the man replied, to stop watching you tear yourselves apart. He looked at each of them, one by one, letting them feel the weight of every unspoken memory between them. Do you ever wonder why the fights in this house never end? Why the same pain returns every year in a new shape? Why none of you sleep without feeling something is wrong? Because the truth doesn't disappear. It waits. A gust of wind slammed against the windows, and the chandelier above them swayed again, casting trembling shadows across their faces. The younger daughter's eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. Why now? After all this time, why come back tonight? He paused for a long moment. Because tonight, he said slowly, was the night you finally crossed a line you can't uncross. His gaze shifted toward the staircase again, toward the rooms above, toward the secrets they believed no one else knew. And I won't let the next generation inherit your damage. A sharp inhale echoed from someone in the back of the room. No one asked what he meant. They all knew. The matriarch took a step forward, though her legs visibly shook. You think you can save this family? I don't need to save it, he said. I need to show it what it truly is. Her lips parted, but he cut her off gently, not cruelly. You've held on to control for so long, you forgot that truth is stronger than fear. You raised everyone here to believe loyalty meant silence. But loyalty doesn't mean hiding everything. Sometimes it means exposing it. The room felt heavier by the second. He moved toward the portrait on the wall, the patriarch's cold, unblinking eyes staring down. He taught you to rule with shadows, the man said, almost whispering. And you became so used to darkness that you forgot what the light looks like? He reached up slowly, his hand brushing the frame. For a moment, silence swallowed the room. Then he pulled the portrait from the wall. Gasps echoed through the hallway as the back of the frame revealed a hidden compartment, one carved into the wall decades earlier. Its wooden door was locked with rusted metal, as if someone hoped time itself would be enough to keep it closed. The matriarch stumbled backward, her hand rising to her mouth. He turned toward the others. You didn't think I knew about this, he said quietly. But I did. I've always known. And tonight I'm opening it. No, the eldest son whispered, but it was too late. He pried the old lock loose. It cracked apart with a sound that felt like the past, Breaking open, the small door swung forward. Inside were documents, letters, ledgers, recordings, evidence of everything the family tried to bury. Everything they erased, everything they did in the name of protection and power. The truth sat there waiting, untouched by dust, untouched by time. A collective breath was sucked from the room. "Everything you hid," he said, stepping back. "Everything you built your legacy on, it's all here." The matriarch shook her head in disbelief. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," he said. "You weren't protecting the family. You were protecting yourselves." Her knees weakened and she reached for the nearest chair. The man's voice lowered. "This house will not walk into tomorrow carrying the weight of these lies. Tonight, the truth comes out. Tonight, the cycle ends." Lightning flashed through the windows, illuminating the room in stark white for a split second, long enough for everyone to see the fear on each other's faces. The storm outside raged, but the real storm had already begun inside the house, and none of them were ready for what would come next. The silence that followed was unbearable. No one moved toward the hidden compartment, though every pair of eyes was locked onto it. The truth sat there like a live wire, untouched, dangerous, waiting for the first person brave enough to acknowledge it. The man didn't force them. He simply stepped back and let the weight of their own history press down on them. The eldest son's voice cracked first. "If this gets out, everything we built, it'll be destroyed." "It was already destroyed," the man replied softly. "You just didn't notice the cracks until they reached you." The younger daughter stepped forward, tears streaking down her cheeks. "We didn't know," she whispered. "We didn't know half of what happened." He turned toward her, his expression unexpectedly gentle. "You weren't supposed to know? That was the real cruelty." Her shoulders shook as she cried, but she didn't look away from the truth in front of her. She was the first to reach into the compartment, pulling out a stack of letters with trembling hands. As she read the first lines, her breath hitched, the color draining from her face. The matriarch pressed her eyes shut, as if refusing to see made the truth any less real. "I did what I had to," she whispered. "Your father, he gave me no choice." The man stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "You had a choice. You just chose fear over honesty. Control over protection?" Her lips quivered. She had nothing left to defend herself with. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, but inside, something else broke, the unspoken pact of silence that had held the family together for decades. One by one, the others approached the compartment, reading, gasping, realizing the truth didn't destroy them. It freed them. The man exhaled deeply, the storm finally easing behind him. "It's over," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "The legacy you tried to hide is gone. Now you get to choose what comes next." No one argued. No one denied. For the first time in years, the house felt lighter. The man turned toward the door, rain-soft light spilling through the windows. He didn't look back. Some legacies crumble. Others begin. Tonight, this family finally learned the difference.